Good afternoon, everyone. I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Casey McConnell. I am a policy analyst on SNAP at the FNS National Office. I'm joined today by Asia Weston. She's a colleague of mine, another policy analyst at the FNS National Office. And of course, today, we want to welcome you all. We're going to do an overview on the recent grant opportunity that FNS announced concerning state SNAP agencies' usage of third-party income databases for purposes of verifying earned income, right? And I'm going to walk through the grant opportunity. I'm going to highlight some key points. I'm going to do my best to demystify some of the evaluation and data requirements that we're looking at. And overall, at the end, I want to be able to answer your questions about the grant. As you may understand, we're trying to drum up participation and interest in these. We need states to participate in this grant. So, without further ado, I'll go ahead and get started. We are recording this webinar too, and we can share it via our FNS regional office partners after this presentation. And in addition, we can share the PowerPoint as well. So I want to start with the policy context, right? So in terms of that, the specific policy context that we're talking about is, again, as I just mentioned, states' usage of third-party income databases for purposes of verifying household earned income, right? So to elaborate on that a little bit, states are, of course, you're required to verify a household's gross non-exempt income prior to certification. With regard to earned income, traditionally, the way that is accomplished, that verification of earned income is accomplished, is by requesting that the household provide pay stubs, right? Everybody on this call understands that. Or, in some cases, contacting the employer directly. Many states, in fact, the majority of states now, consult with a third-party income database, using technology, modernizing. They contact a third party. Typically, it is Equifax is the work number, but there are other providers too, and they use that as an extra source of information, right? And so by entering in a Social Security number for an individual in a household, you're able to, in many cases, retrieve income information that the work number or another provider stores, right? These contracts are negotiated right now. They're negotiated independently by states, by you all, right? And of course, FNS is looking for ways to support and understand this practice better. From our perspective, from FNS's perspective, there are many unknowns. And so a big part of this grant is FNS trying to make sure that it understands this practice as well as it can. That's the first part. And the second part is, once we understand it a little better, we are going to pursue a national level contract for this service. The reason that we're pursuing that is because we have received additional funding to do so from Congress, and more importantly, we want to be able to expand state usage of this tool. But again, before we enter into pursuing that contract and trying to set anything up, we really need to understand it better. And so that's what these grants are really trying to get at. One additional point I want to make, point of clarification, in terms of the policy context. Again, we're talking about using information, in this case, wage information, payroll information from the work number or another provider to verify the statements of the household statements, or a household report, right? But household statements, they can come in on the application, right? In the context of initial certification, household includes its income, right, on the application. Household may also disclose income during the interview, right? The eligibility interview. Household might report income during the cert period. Household might report income on the periodic report. Household might state income or report income on the recertification application or the redetermination application, right? So again, we're talking about verifying household statements. So we have the households a part of the conversation. We're taking the information from the household, and we are confirming the accuracy of that information. That is what we're doing here, verification, right? And I make this distinction between, or I want to make the distinction between this and data matching, right? We're not interested in, for purposes of this grant, we're not interested in the required data matches that states need to do, like SAVE or prisoner match or deceased matching system or NDNH or EDRS. Those are separate, right? We're looking at how states are using Work Number or similar products, these third-party income databases, to verify earned income, right? That's our focus here. So I already made this statement, but I'm going to make it again and again, like a broken record. We're relying on states. We need you to participate in these grants, and we want you to participate so that we can understand the practice better, right? We need to understand, what information is gleaned from the Work Number or the providers, right? What information is coming back? We need to understand that better. How much information? How many months of information? Right? We need to understand how you're using it. Are you using it across the board for all of your households, all applicants, right? Or are you more limited in your usage? Do you only use it for households that report and individuals within the household that report having earned income? Another layer to it is, at what point do you use it? Do you use it before you interview the household, or do you use it after you interview the household? After, for example, the household has not provided verification. So maybe your first approach is the traditional, ask the household to provide verification, and at some point after that, if they don't do so, maybe then you turn to the Work Number or a similar product, right? So there's variation there, and we want to understand that better. And we haven't done a systemic evaluation like we're talking about doing right now. We need to do that to understand it better. So as I said a couple minutes ago, we intend to use this information to pursue a national level contract that's going to best serve states, right? That's our interest here. We're doing this for states. We're doing this for the program. We're doing this for states. And so again, we're all in this together, I guess is another way of putting it. We need you guys to participate. And so I want to continue to make that point. In terms of award amounts, as stated in the announcement letter, which of course is posted on our website and went out March 22nd, a few weeks ago, each grantee will receive a minimum amount. We announced the minimum amounts, and our purpose in doing so was, from a state perspective, we imagined that can help in terms of planning, in terms of understanding what's actually out there. In terms of funding. And so the amounts would range from $200,000 to $1.2 million. We made a calculation based upon caseload and applied that consistently across all states, right? The grant funds can be used to pay for the cost of collecting the evaluation data, which I'll touch on in a couple slides. They can also be used to help pay for the cost of the contract with the third-party income database, right? And so that's important too, right? So it can help pay for the service as well. Who can apply? What are the eligibility requirements, right? So obviously we want states, one of the eligibility criteria, is that states use this practice, right? They do consult with a third-party income database. It could be the Work Number. Most states use the Work Number, right? They're the biggest player out there. But some states don't. They use another provider. That's okay too. We're interested in all of the above. We're interested in any service. It's a third-party database that provides payroll information. In other words, earned income information, right, for households. So it doesn't have to be work number. That's another key point of emphasis, right? Doesn't have to be work number. In most cases, states contract with the work number, but it could be another provider, okay? And then we know that there's a handful of those out there, and we're interested in them too. And so you'd be eligible for the grant if you use another provider as well, not just work number, right? Another key point, and it's up here on the slide. We are opening up the grant for states, of course, that have current contracts, right? They have contracts right now. Maybe you've had it for years. We also are including an eligibility criteria in the eligibility criteria, states that maybe haven't secured a contract yet, but are working on it and will have one in place by October 1, 2021. Okay, and so again, using an example here, you may not have a contract in place right now, but you will have one in place. You're working on it, and you anticipate, right? You can reasonably anticipate having one in place by October 1, 2021. We want you to apply, right? We want you to apply, right? And there are some details in the letter concerning, there's a questionnaire, there's some information that we ask for as part of the application, and there's some caveats or special treatment if you haven't yet actually started using it. And so you would be required to report basically what you anticipate your processes being rather than what they are right now. But again, to make myself clear, or to try to make myself as clear as I can, even if you don't have a contract in place right now, you could still be eligible, provided that you anticipate having one in place by October 1. So don't let that stop you from applying. We still want you to apply. How to apply? These are the X's and O's of that, of how to apply, right? Read the announcement letter, please. Read it carefully. It's long. The application process, I'd be lying if I said it was easy. It does take some paperwork. It sure does, right? And so please read the announcement letter carefully. I'm going to boil things down in this webinar, but I'm not going to cover everything. And so, please look at the announcement letter. If you have any questions, ask your regional office partners, right? Your regional office, FNS regional office contacts, right? Talk to them. I talk to them. They'll contact me. They'll contact Asia. If it's a question they can't answer off, themselves, they'll ask us, and we'll get back to you, right? So we're going to be responsive with you. If you have a question, we're going to be responsive again, because we really, really need you guys to participate in this grant. The application package is located, you'll apply through grants.gov, all right? And so this is actually a direct link to the application package, and we have a direct link on our website where we have the announcement letter posted. You can also access the application package by following the directions in the announcement letter and using the application package number. That one's a little bit tougher. I would just use the direct link. It'll take you straight to the application package because grants.gov, because of this is a non-competitive grant, some of the search capabilities of grants.gov are not as good as they could be. It doesn't pick up on the global search, although it'll come up on another search because it's a non-competitive grant. So we've had some challenges from states in finding the grant application package. Bottom line, if you have trouble, reach out and we'll get you the correct link, okay? So importantly, I want to touch on the evaluation and data requirements, right? Because I think from the state perspective, based on feedback that we've gotten, and we appreciate all feedback, but based on feedback that we've gotten, states would like more information on what we're asking for here. And actually, I'm going to pause myself for a second and apologize because As we go, I would like you guys to, in the audience, to please enter your questions into the chat panel, and we'll get to them at the end. So I forgot to mention that, and I apologize. But please, if you have questions as they come, you can enter them in on an ongoing basis, and we'll get to them. Asia and I will get to them at the end. So thank you. But to start over on the evaluation and data requirements. So one way of looking at this from a practical standpoint is, what's required with the application submission. Again, the deadline is May 21, and what are we asking? What is FNS asking states to do after receipt of funds? And so I'm going to lay it out that way. Okay, I put the first things first. Okay, so the first things are, with the application, we're asking for the cost and terms of your current contract, right? What we want to understand there is how much it costs for each individual transaction. Can you only do? Is there a limit on the number of transactions? Does the cost change when you hit that limit? We want to understand that, because that helps us understand your choices that you make in terms of how you use it. That's a part of the equation. So we want you guys to share that. You don't have to share you wouldn't have to share your entire contract. That's not what we're asking for. What we're asking for is an explanation of what it costs for the service. That's really what we're asking, how it's constructed. That helps us understand how you're using it. It helps us understand, what potentially the best practices are. Ideally, we're going to get information from several different states, hopefully, 20 different states or even 30 different states. Once we have a broad sample of information like this, we're going to be able to firm up some of our understanding of what's going on, and the cost of the service and how it's structured is important to that understanding. The second thing that we're asking for in terms of evaluation and data requirements as part of the application package is a 20-question questionnaire, right? And it's enclosed in it's one page. It's enclosed in the grant letter, in the grant announcement letter, right, which is posted on our website. 20 questions. They're process questions, right? They're or qualitative questions, if you want to put them that way. But they're asking questions about when you use the work number or whatever product you use, right? When are you running matches with the work number is one way that it's put. In addition, they're asking what you use the information for, right? And so again, and other questions, right? So they're asking, what are your processes? What angles are you taking using this information? How are you using it to make your jobs easier? Is another way of putting it. We want to understand these things. We want to understand, states are the best testing ground, obviously. You guys are exploring this, and you've been using it for some time. FNS, we need to understand better. We need to understand what works and what doesn't work. We want to gather as much information as we can from as many states. We want to understand different approaches, because at the end of the day, we want to be able to come up with maybe, a good understanding of what the best approaches are, and to be able to support that with data, right? And to be able to share that information, of course, right? So before receipt of funds or with the application, again, speaking broadly, we're asking for the cost in terms of the current contract. We're asking for you all to complete that 20-question questionnaire. One additional point on the 20 questions, the questionnaire, you do not need to write a novel in response to each question, right? It can be brief, right? It can be 2 to 3 sentences, 3 to 4 sentences. That's okay. And some of them would only be 1 sentence, right? So you don't need to write extensively on this. Please write concisely and answer the question as best you can, as thoroughly as you can. But you don't need to write too much. It can be relatively brief, is what I'm trying to say. After receipt of funds, right? This is where we get into the more quantitative data that we're trying to obtain. And so we broke it into two data sets, right? And we explained this in the announcement letter. The first data set covers 3 months, right? It is October, November, and December 2021. And so what we're trying to do with this data set is retrieve hard data or quantitative data on different characteristics, different types of households, and how the state is using third-party data matches, such as the work number, to obtain information on their income. Right? It is I think 6 or 7 data points. We understand that this is not information that you would normally track, right? We understand that. That's the reason why we're doing the grant, right? Because we wouldn't normally track this. We need to fund a grant in order to obtain this hard data, and we need you all to participate, right? But we know it takes legwork on your part. We know it takes planning on your part. And so what we're trying to do in supporting that is, of course, allow you to obtain it, allow you to gather this data on an ongoing basis, right? We're not going to ask you to look back in the past before you were tracking this, but we're going to try to, to lay it out in terms of timeline. The grants application, the last day or the due date for applications, last day to apply is May 21st, right? We're going to work as hard as we can, as fast as we can to award grants and provide funds as soon as we can. Ideally, we will provide funds, at some point in hopefully maybe within July, maybe August. And at that point, what we want to try to do is provide you all with enough time to stand up what you need to stand up in order to gather that data for October, November, December, right? And one final point on that data, as you review the announcement letter, take a look at that. If there are elements that are intimidating, that you're not sure you can gather, you just don't know how you would gather, give us feedback. Don't let that, ask a question. Don't let that stop you from applying, right? Don't be afraid to apply because you're not sure about one single data point. Give us feedback. Go ahead and apply. Ask a question. We're not going to ask for blood from a stone, so to speak, right? We want to work with you. We want you to apply. We want you to participate in the grant. And for example, if we get feedback from many states that there's just no way they can gather a single data point, we can adjust, right? We're going to be reasonable. We can adjust the requirements, right? So we can have a conversation. We can talk about, we can create workarounds. We can find ways to get the information that will be helpful to us, but we don't want states to be afraid to apply based on a single data point or fear over or concern about whether or not they'll be able to satisfy the data requirements as they are written. We want feedback from you, and we don't want, if you have a challenge in an area, we want you to tell us, to be frank. Data set 2. So this one is another one. We've gotten a couple questions so far on what exactly does data set 2 mean? Because in our announcement letter, we say something, admittedly, it's vague, right? And it is vague right now because, I'll try to explain why it's vague. It's vague because we need to get that information from the 20-question questionnaire before we can really put together an evaluation of those that sample of 200 cases. So should have explained that in a different order, pardon me. But data set 2 is a sample of 200 cases. It would be, we would review those cases states would be in the lead for reviewing those cases for specific characteristics. What we're trying to get at through that sample and that review is to obtain evidence potentially or be able to draw conclusions is the best way to put it about efficiencies gained, right? Can we look at these cases and draw any conclusions about time savings, or timeliness, improved timeliness rates, right? Can we draw any conclusions about churn? Does this diminish churn? Does this allow the state to certify more eligible households than it otherwise could? We want to be able to draw those kind of conclusions, right? And so with this small sample, those are the kind of things. Those are right now. Those are just ideas because we haven't designed it with you all yet. Once we receive answers to the questionnaire, we would engage with the grantees, right, to design this review of these sample cases. So there will be a conversation there. There will be collaboration there, FNS and the state, right? How are we going to look at these cases? And we're going to have to, get creative maybe a little bit, and we'll have ideas and we'll share them with you all, and there'll be a conversation to figure out exactly how to design that review of those 200 cases and what characteristics will be looked at, what different information within the case will be compared to one another, right? And so, again, admittedly vague right now, but again, not something that I think, not something we want to preclude or cause the state to have any angst about participating in the grant. It will be a conversation. We're not going to ask for states to try to do things that we know they can't do, right? So we're going to have a conversation. We're going to collaborate on designing that, again, based on the state's processes, in order to draw conclusions about efficiencies gained, and advantages of using the Work Number or a similar product, right? At this point, I have finished my overview and want to open it up to questions. And so, wow, we've got a great amount of questions, and I'm actually going to, because I can't really walk and chew gum at the same time, I need help. I'm going to ask for Asia to help tell me read out the questions. And Asia, are you unmuted or are you still on mute? Let me take you off. Pardon me, having a few technical difficulties there, taking Asia off mute. So I can read some of these questions in the chat. So the first question is the focus of the grant towards the eligibility determination only, or can a welfare fraud unit apply for the funding? So great question. Our primary focus is SNAP eligibility determinations. So to answer that question, it's the former. We're looking at how state SNAP agencies are using this to verify earned income. We do, however, ask as part of that questionnaire, we have a question that gets at the latter part of your question, which is what about fraud? What about integrity? And so we do ask the question of, like, do you use this information for other purposes? Because we do want to understand that too. But to answer your question, our primary focus is on certification policy, eligibility determinations, and using this information as verification to that end. So the next question we have is the focus, are the awarded proposals from the FY20 grant able to be reviewed? Opportunity available, Are the awarded proposals from the FY20 grant opportunity available to be reviewed? That's a good question. So this is it is a similar grant to what we put out last year in FY 2020, and that question actually gives me a segue to explain that too. We did put out similar grants last year, and I'll answer your question as well. But we put out similar grants last year with the hope that we would have many participants and be able to obtain a lot of information, right? Unfortunately, there were extenuating circumstances, and we understand why we didn't get a lot of applicants, but we didn't, right? states where everybody was struggling with COVID, and it just was not a great time. But we did have 3 states apply, and I can I think, given that to answer your question, given that it's a somewhat different, it is a bit different grant. I'm not sure how valuable those applications would be. I think it's better to describe what we're looking for, and I'll talk about that briefly. But I encourage you to reach out, the person that asked this question, to reach out to your regional office, and we can talk more about it. But as is said in the announcement letter, we're looking for. There are several things listed. There are several forms, but in terms of the application and any narrative section, we're asking for a brief proposal. It's no more than 3 pages, so it's relatively brief, and we want you to answer those 20 questions. Right. The brief proposal is an outline of how you would your tentative plans for gathering the data that we ask for. Right. And as I said, during my presentation, if you have feedback on any of the particular data points that you think will be particularly challenging or that you have concerns about, we want you to share that in your proposal. But it's a brief narrative of no more than 3 pages, right? And so that's really, in terms of the proposal, that's what we're looking for. But again, I want you to please reach out to your regional office if you'd like more feedback on exactly how to put the proposal together, because we can work with you on that. We can give you feedback on that. Next question we have is, will the work number / TALX contract allow us to share the costs and terms of the contract? Are we legally allowed? So we're not asking you to share the contract. Again, I want to make that point. We're not asking you to share your contract. And I cannot speak to the legal obligations of each state's contract. What we're asking for is an outline of how is it set up? What does it cost per? What services? First of all, what service is provided? B, what is the cost for that service? And how is it structured? Do you pay per? Do you pay when no information is returned, or do you only pay when information is returned? How much do you pay each time you reach out and ask for information? Is there a limit on how many times you can ask for information? That's what we're looking for. And so we're not asking you to share your contract itself. So the next question is from Augustine, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. And it's asking, Casey, as I hear you talking, am I correct in assuming that this is not a competitive process as long as states meet application requirements and are willing to participate? You just said it probably better than I did in my presentation. Thank you. But yes, that's absolutely correct. So it's a non-competitive grant. It's a non-competitive grant. And so there are eligibility requirements and there are obligations that you need to meet as part of the grant, but it's not a competitive application process. And so as long as you meet the requirements of eligibility and you commit to working in good faith with us to provide the data that we're asking for, you can receive these funds. That's a really good question, and thank you for asking it. So the next question that we have is, what if we can't get all the data points? We have no current means to collect some of the data. So I'll touch on this again. I think we do not want this to dissuade you from applying, and we want you to cite any concerns that you have, to explain them in your application. But to elaborate on what one of the things I talked about earlier, we're going to provide time for you to stand up a plan, right? The different states will put together different plans, I think, depending on how often they use it and which households they use, which households they run these data matches on, right? Which households are they attempting to verify earned income via the work number or another provider, right? That's gonna have an impact on how they gather the data. There's going to be various different options that states can take. It could be manually tracking information by giving caseworkers a tool, an Excel spreadsheet, and they would enter in information every time they use it to capture the characteristics that we're looking for, right? So that would mean, significant amount of planning on behalf of the state, to get the workers trained up on what information the state wants them to capture, or to record is a better way to put it, each time they use the work number or another product, right? So it could be as simple as that. It could also involve making changes to your system. Now, those take generally, it depends, but based on my observation and experience and listening to states, sometimes maybe that's not realistic to get that done in that short amount of time. Maybe it is. I think it depends. But that's where the funding comes in, right? You could also devote specific staff to gathering this information. There's a lot of different ways to do it. I think you guys are in the driver's seat on that, and you understand how best to take on something like this in your state. But it will take planning. And just because you can't think off the top of your head right now how you get it, that doesn't mean you can't get it, right? You can put a plan together, right? You can, because you'll be able to collect it on an ongoing basis. You can stand up a plan. How are we going to collect these characteristics? Are we going to have our caseworkers do it on an ongoing basis? Are we going to make some changes to our system so that it's easier for our caseworkers to record this information? Are we going to do it via an Excel spreadsheet? And I'm only throwing out a few ideas. There could be others, right? But it will take some work, and that's part of where that's essential to it's inherent to the grant, right? That's why that's one of the main reasons we're providing money, right? Is to support those efforts, right? So the next question we have is that in their state they use the state's labor department labor wage and an unemployment insurance benefit system for income verification in addition to the work number. So I may be slightly off base here, but I think, as I said a few minutes ago, what we're interested in here are third-party databases like Equifax is the work number that gather payroll information from individual employers. We're not as interested in we're not interested in the state's labor department information. We're interested in your state activities contracting directly with these third parties, state SNAP agencies contracting with these third parties, is how I would answer that question. So another question we have is about state difficulties in obtaining income earned through the gig economy. So I'm assuming things like Uber, right? Is this something FNS's long-term plan seeks to address? It's a very good question. I can't speak to that on this webinar. That's certainly something that we're thinking about, and we know states are thinking about too. Are there tools at our disposal are there ways to improve payment accuracy? We're thinking about payment accuracy. We think about it all the time, right? In addition to program access, it's a balance, right? But I can't speak to specifically the gig economy here. I think, except up to the point of, and I may sound a bit ignorant here, but to the extent that some an organization or a business in the gig economy, of course, feeds information into one of these third-party databases, maybe that happens, and so to that extent, we would be obtaining income information on the gig economy. But again, I'm not entirely sure the extent to which that occurs. But next question. Another good question. Are you focusing this info from eligibility QC or IPV? So it's eligibility. That's a good question. We're focused on eligibility, right? Again, back to the policy context. We're focused on how states are using this to verify a household's earned income as part of certification policy and eligibility determination. So just to run through it one more time, right? You got certification. You got the household applies. They state their income on the application. There's also an eligibility interview. So household is stating information about their income there. State needs to verify it. Traditionally, they verify it via pay stubs by asking the household to provide pay stubs. Now states are using these third-party databases, such as the Work Number. That's what we're interested in, right? And that could happen at initial application certification. Could happen when the household reports a change, a new job, and it needs to be verified, that income. Could happen at the periodic report, if income needs to be verified at that point. Could happen at redetermination or recertification. Same difference, right? Different word, same thing. Recertification, right? So that's what we're interested in. But to boil it down and say and just speak broadly, we're interested in how they're using it for eligibility. To answer your question. So next question we have is, will we send this presentation to the group? And yes, we will. So we're recording this and we'll share it via our regional office partners. We're going to do the same presentation tomorrow. And so maybe it won't be this one. Maybe I'll do a better job tomorrow and I'll share that one, but we will share it. And so that's a good question. Thank you. The next question we have is concerning the data set 2, the 200 case reviews that each state would do. And I think it's asking, am I right that it's only 200 cases? That's correct. So again, we don't want this to be, as I think you all are probably picking up, we want to make sure that it's a balance here. We want information, but we don't want to ask states to do things that is going to delay them gathering the information or make it overly difficult or overly detailed. We want to make sure we get good information, but we don't want to go too far to the point where all of a sudden it's too challenging and it's not information that states can actually provide, right? So it's a small sample. It's 200 cases. Okay. Again, it's admittedly vague right now because we need to look at the processes and the information that you all are going to provide with your applications in order to actually design the best review of those cases that we can to get at what we want to get at, right? But it is only 200 cases. The next question we have is with regard to using the grant funds for the costs of the current contract. What are the limitations to this? So the limitations are, there are no limitations, to be frank. The letter states that this is what you can use the funds that you're awarded for. First, gathering the information, gathering the evaluation data, right? Second, supporting your current contract, offsetting the cost of your current contract, right? And so it's a good question, but again, to be clear, we don't have specific limitations on that. But with the proposal, with your proposal that I mentioned, again, it's only up to 3 pages. We would want you to provide what you anticipate using the funds for, of course. Next question we have is, in continuation of your most recent comment, not interested in, okay, so I think this is with regard to when I was referencing state labor information. We had a question about that. Right, and so the question is, if a state is not using a third-party database, such as the Work Number or a similar provider, are they not eligible to participate? That's right. We're looking at, if you're not using the Work Number or a similar product, to put it differently, if you're not using a third-party database, income database, to verify earned income, and you're not contracting out with that entity, right, then no, you're not eligible. That's what we're looking at. right? We're not looking at traditional connections or even some of them required per our regulations between the SNAP state agency and TANF or other arms of the state human services agency, right? We're interested in states contracting out with third-party payroll providers, third-party income information providers, in other words, okay? And Asia just pointed out that I missed the question. Thank you, Asia. And I apologize for not being able to get you off mute. We'll fix that. So the question is, do the 3 pages include the list of questions and answers? So those 3 pages, that maximum, that's the proposal. That's not the questions and answers. But I want to underline what I said in terms of the 20 questions, the questionnaire, the questions and answers. We're not looking for extended answers on those. You can be relatively brief. I think in some cases, you'll understand based on the question, but we want you to answer the question thoroughly, but you do not need to go into an extensive amount of detail. If we have follow-up questions, we'll ask them, right? But based on our experience with the 3 states that we're working with right now, for these current grants, again, which are similar, they've been able to answer similar questions relatively concisely. Again, I throw out 3 to 4 sentences. Maybe it's a little more, but the point I'm trying to make is it's not a page each answer. It's relatively brief, and it's not intended to be overly burdensome for you. So I hope that helps. So I think we've gotten to the end of the questions. I appreciate everyone joining today. I apologize for it just being me talking. I hope that I didn't bore you too much. I hope this was helpful to you. I want to close with saying one more time, if you have questions, ask them. Talk to your regional office contacts. If they need to contact us, Asia and I, they will, and we'll get back to you. We need states to apply to this. We need you to apply to it so that we can, figure this out to the extent we need to try to expand it, right? To try to pursue a national contract that's going to work for you guys. And so you've got a stake in the game. We've got a stake in the game. We're in this together. We need to work together. We need you to apply. We need you to participate. Don't let the data requirements scare you. If you have questions about the data requirements, ask them. If you have concerns, raise them. And so again, thank you all. Appreciate it. And we look forward to working with you. Hope you apply.